Welcome to the All Out Leadership Podcast, hosted by Pastor Eric Lawson, where each episode is uniquely designed to help you live all out by bringing you practical leadership from a biblical perspective delivered in 10 minutes or less. So whether you're a business leader, serving in ministry, or simply looking to grow in your leadership, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into this week's topic, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and download the show notes at ericlawson.com/podcast. And while you're at it, feel free to share the content on social media. Now, let's join Pastor Eric for this week's conversation.
Welcome as we continue another edition of the All Out Leadership Podcast. We are in 1 Chronicles 28. We read this passage last week. Going to give you this passage again as the next principle we learn from the closing chapters of David's life. Then David gave his son Solomon the plans for the vestibule, its houses, its treasuries, its upper chambers, its inner chambers, and the place of the mercy seat, and plans for all that he had by the Spirit. David left a successor a playbook. So we see that he had a successor in Solomon, but not only did he have a successor, he gave that successor the playbook. He gave him the plans. Here's the policies, here's the plans, here's the blueprints on how you want to succeed. And so a transition with any department, with any leader, there should be some type of written playbook that you're putting into the hands of that new person that is coming in. This one thing has probably hurt us and caused us to lose ground, lose time, lose energy, lose money, and lose momentum more than any one thing. And that is anytime we've had certain transitions with staff, because, there's just seasons in people's lives. Not every transition is a bad transition. But the person who is in an area leading a department, whether it's an admin, whether it's a department director, or whether it's a pastor, they should be putting together their playbook. These are the policies and procedures, and this is how we do this, and this is what we don't do and why we don't do it. And that's always in a fluid book. It's not like you write it one time and it's done and then it goes on a desk drawer somewhere. Like, that's fluid. You're always adding to it. You're always changing it. You're always updating it. You should always put what version this is and have a date next to that version so you know it's the most updated version. And that person should be given this new playbook when they come in to take that place. And so have you been creating the playbook to give your successor? So I want to talk about what should go into the playbook for a moment. And it may vary for different organizations, but here's things I found useful in all of our playbooks within every department, especially if you're in an administrative role. Here's things that should go in there. Somewhere you should be passing on accounts and passwords. We have been locked out of, over the years, different accounts, social media platforms, because somebody goes, hey, I'm opening, and they open up something, it's great. They got the Instagram going for us, or they got this. Well, they transition, they move on, and they didn't tell anybody the account, and they didn't give anybody a password, and we're eternally locked out of that. I think we literally have some accounts floating around out there today, and you're like, why hasn't Element Church updated this? Because we can't get in it, because nobody gave us the passwords, and they moved on. So that just does not look good on your succession. Okay. And remember, the farther you get away from the organization you left, the easier it is for people to talk bad about you. So you want to leave as good as you can. So checklists, hopefully you're creating checklists for your department, your organization. If not, hopefully you just got inspired to go, hey, maybe I should create some checklists. And those checklists should be handed on to that, policies. You should be creating policies, and then you should be creating procedures. And it would be good to put footnotes as to why these different policies or why these different procedures came into place, because a new person coming in, they question the policies. Why is that? And then also preferences when it comes to travel. A lot of organizations, people are traveling for business meetings. They're attending conferences. So if you happen to be working and scheduling and you're part of, helping people get where they need to go, you're in the logistics side of your organization, definitely start just even documenting what's your boss's travel preference, what's their airline, what's their frequent flyer number, what's their, rental car numbers, their hotel. And then they can accumulate a lot of points, which is very nice. But the preferences, it seems like over the years, for whatever reason, I have had to multiple times recreate whatever those particular things were as certain things transitioned, because somewhere it's just gotten lost. Now, not recently, but early in the days of the church. And then random things that nobody else is going to know. If you are valuable to your organization, there are things you know that only you know, and only you know that you know them, and nobody else knows that you know them. But they will know that you know them when you left, and they realize, hey, they knew something we didn't know that they know. We wish we knew what they know, but we don't know because they didn't tell us. But man, we miss it. So that was a lot to say. Write down these random things that you just know. You intuitively know a bunch of things. You've been around your organization a long time. Put it in print, and then just, again, keep this as a living document. It's breathing, it's living, it's growing, it's evolving, and you just keep that. So the greatest thing you could do is hand your person coming in to take your role and walk them through that. Don't throw it at them. Like, walk them through it. Like, hey, let's read this together. I know it's boring, and I know you're going to want to fall asleep, but here's a Prime Energy drink, and we're going to go through this. And then that way they can ask questions. Now, I want to talk to the person coming in and taking a job. You're taking a position. If somebody hands you a playbook, read it. I have had staff. God bless them. I love working in church. And I've had staff literally take over departments, and they were given a playbook, and they never read it. And so then all of a sudden I'm cruising along, and then things start to drift, and I'm like, well, didn't we have and I thought and wasn't there a policy, and what? And then I go back and I'll investigate, and I'll go, what happened? Well, they never read the playbook. So my question is this: why would you take over a department and not read the playbook that has been written, the sacred documents that have been written over years? Why wouldn't you read that? I don't know. Okay, let's read that. Now, once you go through that, you're probably going to question things inside of the playbook. Why do we do it that way? Why don't we do it this way? Ask a lot of questions of the team members that might be there to go, hey, how did we get to this decision? Talk about that. Now, what you're going to find is there are certain things that they're outdated. They might need to be changed. They might need to be updated. But go to someone who maybe is an authority, someone who you're accountable to go, hey, I went through this playbook. Here's some things I have questions on. Help me understand. Here's some things I'm not sure are the best policies. What do you think about? Here's some changes I've thought about. And again, you're not going to make all these changes in the first 90 days because you listened to my earlier podcast on what to do in the first 90 days. And you learned it wasn't make a bunch of change. You're just making about a bunch of notes about what you could change, but you're letting people weigh in on that. So, all right, there you go. That is a podcast every new staff member at Element Church will be listening to, and every current member of Element Church will be listening to you. And if this benefits your staff, let them listen to it too. See you next week. We're going to pick up with some more important tips on successful transitions.
Thank you for joining us on the All Out Leadership Podcast. We hope you gained new biblical insight that challenged you to grow in your leadership. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we would love your help in getting the content out farther. You can help by subscribing to the podcast at ericlawson.com/podcast and telling others about it. Next week, Pastor Eric will be back with another episode. So until then, we hope you have a great week being an all-out leader.